This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
This Father's Day, score big with the Minnesota Wild. You can get 2 weekday game tickets and a 3-piece Wild grill set. Perfect for the ultimate hockey dad. Offer ends June 15th. That's Sunday. Get all the details. Enter for your chance to win this amazing Father's Day gift at KFAN.com. Keyword contests.
I'm looking at a CNN headline, from the Iranian state media. Iran activates air defenses over Tehran to intercept more Israeli strikes. Wouldn't you have started that earlier if that was an option for you?
Start my column earlier.
All right, now, we didn't have the warning system in place before, but we're gonna start that now. That doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. There's a lot of ground to cover regarding the Middle East, which we'll get to a little bit later. I didn't forget. I kind of ran out of time to get to a text from Larry Mondello guy who was listening to the conversation I had with Rick Bozich, who's announcing he's wrapping up a 50-year career as an ink-stained wretch on July 1. Let me go back. Let me scroll down to get to the Mondello text. Most recent, I guess I should say, Mondello text. When you were in grad school in Bloomington pondering where to go with your lives, did either of you consider being a cutter? Now, by the way, as I recall, there was, for the kids, there was a motion picture about the what was called the Little 500. It was a famous bicycle race at Indiana University that ran every spring. And it was eventually turned into a motion picture, very good film, old now, called Breaking Away. Excellent film that attempted to sort of capture the spirit of it. And if you were a cutter, you were someone who didn't go to IU, but lived in the town, and chances are worked in one of the various, like, limestone quarries, whatever the case may be. Therefore, you were a cutter. And it was almost like, sadly, you were considered a cut below, right? And so you had to deal with that sort of arrogance on the part of the snooty, privileged college kids, the whole bit. And it's a great film. But my recollection is when I was there that in real life they weren't called cutters, they were called stonies. Stonies.
Yeah,
but maybe they felt like cutter on the big screen Hollywood, it sounded better than stony, or that stony would have connotations of other things like getting stoned or whatever the case may be. I don't know.
Right. Interesting.
Have you ever seen that movie?
No. When he said cutter, I just assumed he was talking about your pickup basketball where he was a passer, you were more of a shooter.
That was all I could do. I couldn't dribble. I couldn't guard.
But as the general, Bob Knight, would tell you, cutting is just as important.
Well, that's true.
You got to cut to get open.
Yeah.
You know me, I'm a ball guy.
I'm a ball guy.
I'm thinking X's and O's, Rick Carlisle. I'm thinking cutters.
Ben Goessling is going to join us at 4:30, and Lavelle is scheduled for 5:30 today. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line is open at 64686. A couple people are suggesting maybe we do, Bozich and I do a podcast.
There you go. You've always wanted to do one.
There it is.
There's your extra pod.
Are we sure the White Sox are not to blame for the Bozich retirement? I didn't ask him that, but I pretty much might.
Well, he wants to watch more White Sox.
Well, that's the thing.
So I guess, in a way, yes.
But he is, as much as he, tends to complain about them, I don't know what he would do without them.
He's there every day.
He's there every day.
Watching it.
And he is a guy who should go to spring, because, the beauty of spring training, if you're a ball guy, is what? It's just the pace of it. You just feel like the rhythm. Yep. It's just, you take your time. There's no hurry. And he's a guy who would watch batting practice, for God's sake. He would watch people getting fly balls, sprinting in the outfield. He would absolutely love all that. And in all honesty, where I don't blame him that he has said, okay, now's the time, is, and this is a great advantage I've had since I left newspapers, the thought at age, and he's older than me, I think he's 72, of having to continually go into locker rooms at this late date, waiting on other people's schedule, especially, as he said, when the proximity is just not there. The opportunity is not there because it's all so much. There is so much. There's the how do I explain it? The buffer zone is so much bigger,
especially in college.
Which
is what he loves.
Yeah, there used to be days when even in college you could walk into a locker room and chat with a player for 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah,
and that just hardly exists. Now it's got to be arranged. You might not see that player again for 6 weeks. It's just sort of the way it goes, and so. In his mind, I know he's thinking, I've done all that. I don't need to do that anymore. I don't need to keep waiting, on other people's times for giving me maybe 3 minutes before a public relation or a media relations person says, okay, that's enough.
Right.
One more question.
Right. Yeah. And in the pros, it's still collectively bargained in a lot. Where the locker room is open for either. After practice or post game.
Yes.
Pros you would find, but college, as I know, it's who's coming out. Okay.
Yeah.
These two or three, and that's even changed in my time working in 20 years. So I can't imagine how different it was back in the day. Feinstein used to always talk about that with you as well.
No question.
One of the things he hated about how things had changed, because a guy who lives for the story and the relationship. That's how you get them.
That's how you get them, and that's how you develop sources. That's how you develop rapport on a human level. And that's the great irony, because what we hear all the time, especially in the NBA, no one's telling stories anymore.
Right.
And the truth is, it's a lot harder to get through the layers of bureaucracy to have a chance to tell those stories. I've told the story. How many times have I told you? When I was covering the NBA, this goes back to the early, between 81 and 86. I might show up. I might go to L.A. for a Lakers-Spurs game. Spurs are on the road. And in no time, the media relations director has arranged me to eat lunch with George Gervin.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, that's to do an interview, the idea, but we're going to do it over lunch. That stuff's impossible now. There's no chance. I mean, now maybe the top could still have that kind of access.
Right.
But that was an example.
Wilbon can get a lunch, probably.
I'm sure, exactly right. But the idea, it's preposterous to think of, we got an hour and a half with George Gervin. Sitting around, eating, pretzels and rolls and burgers, whatever the case may be. Iceman. That's what they called him back in the day. Let's do this. Let's pause. And then, as I mentioned, bottom of the hour, we've got Goessling. A couple updates from the Middle East to discuss, and who knows what else when we can. More interesting threads I found late last night, and we're only going to be able to explore a little bit of it here before the bottom of the hour pause. I wanted to pass along to you. It reads as follows. Nadav Eyal is the individual who is responsible, longtime columnist in Middle East, big knocker. And he's referring to, he's calling it the Israel-Iran war, the first day. We are now about 15 hours. This was actually from last night, after Israel launched, or this morning, what it labels a preventive strike against the Islamic Republic of Iran, targeting its nuclear facilities and ballistic missile sites. First, this is not an operation. It is not a strike. Israel is now at war with Iran. And Israel's defense establishment understands that well. I spoke a short while ago with a senior Israeli security official. His most important message directed at the Israeli public: prepare for Iran's response. Do not underestimate what they can do. It will be substantial and lethal. And we also have a lot of evidence since that indeed a number of there are waves of missiles headed towards Israel. Now, again, effective. The earlier waves, not, I don't think, particularly effective, but there are apparently more waves coming. What that means, I think it may be too early to tell. Now to the war, he writes. At the beginning of 2024, while Israel was still fighting the beginning of the war in Gaza, it began receiving what security officials described as troubling signals, Iran was advancing in what's known as the weapons group, the part of its nuclear program focused on the actual assembly of a nuclear bomb or warhead. Let me scroll down here. Iranians had been very encouraged by their latest missile attack on Israel in late October 24, and they thought it proved that Israel's Arrow and other defenses have limited capacity to hold off a major barrage. Considering how small Israel is, definitely compared to Iran, they focused on building abilities to bigger strikes, seeing this a soft spot of the Israeli society. Another development during the war, Israel obtained intelligence material revealing a joint plan by Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iranian elements, a plan that wasn't just rhetoric but described in detail the actual destruction of the state of Israel. So Israel's response is to develop a plan that would maximize its Air Force's capabilities, prioritizing targets, etc. Planning is one thing, executing is something entirely. A strike like this requires American coordination, more on that in a minute, over Middle East airspace, over shared intelligence, over ammunition chains, etc. And crucially, what happens if and when Iran indeed retaliates. Ahead of the strike, Israel employed a sophisticated psychological deception campaign aimed at the Iranian leadership. With U.S. assistance, they planted the idea that nothing could happen before the next and supposedly crucial round of talks in Oman between the U.S. envoy and Iranian representatives. That window of false security was essential to the strike plan because it allowed Israel to target senior Iranian military commanders who did not go into any alert with maximum effect. They talk about the importance of Mossad playing a role, not as central as the Air Force or military intelligence. It maintained a drone base inside Iran. Drone base inside Iran, flying UAVs during the operation as well. Now comes the strategic phase. It's obvious that the U.S. and Israel are playing good cop, bad cop with Iran. Israel strikes. Meanwhile, President Trump says, I'm ready to sign a deal. It's the same model Israel proposed regarding Hezbollah as well. That's the other confusing thing that happened last night was Rubio sends out a tweet, an announcement, basically making it sound like this is an Israeli operation. This has nothing to do with us. And there wasn't even anything that said, but we stand with Israel in the decision that they made. That lent credence to the notion that we were caught unawares. I didn't quite believe that because if you recall 2 days ago, Guardsy, we talked about, I think I quoted from it, Trump was at some culture, some arts event about 2 or 3 days ago. And he had a short presser, and he was asked about the fact that a lot of the U.S. forces in parts of the Middle East were being evacuated, or at least like family members, et cetera. They were tightening things up. And he basically said, yeah, we're moving some things around depending on what happens. And then he threw in, it's pretty simple. We're still talking to the Iranians, but they can't have nukes. They can't have it, which to me indicates, does it not, that we knew there was a chance that something was going to be up here. So that's another one of the debates that has broken out. And I say what I said earlier. The key question to me is, where does this go? Because if Iran doesn't have the capabilities of fighting back, then this may not turn into a conflagration. But my concern is, are we going to get drawn in? What plans do they have that even the Israelis might know about? And how big might this get? Because unlike post-October 7, Israel is making no bones about it. This is more of a war footing in this particular case, short of obviously invading the country. So stay tuned for more on that later in the broadcast. We'll come back and return to the relative safety of the toy department to talk football and other items with Ben Goessling. That's
Man.
The stories a stadium could tell.
It does kind of feel like football weather out right now, doesn't it?
A little bit.
It's, what's the current temp? Well, actually, I think we've finally cracked 60. But a lot of the day, it was in the 50s, I think. Wet, soggy, dark, dank. We consider that football weather, although football weather doesn't matter here anymore because we got the roof on anyway.
56 and overcast right now.
Ugh. Ben Goessling, kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline, brought to you by our good friends at Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. I don't know if you'll agree with this premise or not, but I'm going to try it on you regardless. Guardsy and I, yesterday, I led the show with the belief, if I were a more religious man, it might have been a prayer, that the regular season, forget training camp, the regular season, Game 1, Monday night in Chicago, can't come soon enough, because I think all of you media jackals you're in an untenable position where your job calls for you to write when the Vikings, for example, have a 3-day mandatory minicamp. And yet I refuse to believe that we can possibly advance any of the most pertinent and important Viking stories in any meaningful way yet, because it's bleeping June and we haven't seen the quarterback really do anything when anything's at stake. So do you agree or disagree with that premise?
I 100% agree with that. If it were not for the fact that it means my summer would go away at the stroke of a pen if this became a thing, I would take that deal, because, yes, it is going to be a long slog between now and September 8th or whatever the date is of the opener in Chicago, and it's going to be filled with hot takes on whatever show Colin Cowherd's on these days. First Take, I will have all of these things on every JJ McCarthy clip of training camp being analyzed to the hilt, and we will be mining it for meaning about, is he going to be the guy or not? And yes, it is a situation where every little thing, whether it's something that one of us posts on social media or the team puts in a clip, everybody is sitting there parsing it to degrees that are not really worth parsing, because it doesn't mean anything. I mean, a lot of what they're doing this time of year is kind of giving him opportunities to test himself and try things out, and people are probably already taking that too far. I mean, Nevin O'Connell yesterday was joking about it, that commending us for not going too over the top with counting reps and counting stats from the passing camp that we watched. And I'm sure it'll happen in training camp, but yes, it's going to be a lot of that, and I will try to contribute to as little of it as possible, but I know it's going to happen with or without me.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, like I said, you're stuck, and so you got to fill the copy, and it's football is 12 months a year now. We know that. That's not even negotiable. I mean, there have been years you've been on with me where we've tried to kind of let you spend, get a lot of time off in the summer. And now, so maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I'm saying, well, you got to be on all the time. But I do think there's some discipline that can be exerted here on, where people go with stories. I'll give you another good example, and maybe this will be proven to be true. Although if it is, I think it's going to just add to the layers of pressure that the quarterback feels. I got a text yesterday, I think, or maybe it was an email from somebody saying that 9 to noon, basically the position taken, and I don't know if it was the host, sub-host, guest, maybe it was you for all I know, I don't know, basically said that the Vikings now have a Super Bowl level roster. And that's a fact. Look, I think we all think they've done really well in free agency this offseason, at least on paper. But let's say that's true, even though I think it's a little early to know it. Doesn't that add to what we were talking about last week, that, my God, this quarterback, there's a lot on his shoulders if that's what you are sending out to people. Like, we're ready to make the run right now, not in 2026 or 7, but right now in 2025. I think it ratchets up the pressure.
Yeah, I think that's right, because the reality in the NFL in the 21st century is you do not have a Super Bowl contending team if you don't have the quarterback. I think you may find the example every once in a while that somebody has everything else going, that they can kind of reverse engineer it and work their way around it. But generally, if you have a Super Bowl roster, it means that you're starting at the quarterback and saying, we have the guy. And they might. We don't, we will see that in the coming weeks. I think they're optimistic about where he's at. But the reality is, I mean, they've said it, that there's a level of projection that goes into this just because he hasn't played a game yet. So it is a fascinating situation to walk into because you have a team that won 14 games last year. You have what Goessling called with us a couple of weeks ago when he was on our podcast. He said this QB incubator that they have is the best in the NFL, and he's obviously, you know, biased in that regard. But what they did with Sam Darnold and what you've seen from quarterbacks that want to be here, I think speaks to that a little bit. So you have all of these things working in your favor, but it does have this sort of double-edged sword of there's no patience or no willingness to say, hey, this may take a little time if you're trying to figure out how to play this position at age 22. I mean, this is the hardest position in the NFL to play, probably the hardest position in sports to play, and figuring it all out overnight is a lot to ask from anybody. And maybe he is that guy like CJ Stroud a couple of years ago where he comes in and right away he's got it, and certainly has succeeded at a high level in college, won a national title in Michigan. So maybe he comes out to be that player. But to say that it's a Super Bowl caliber roster, I think without knowing what the quarterback is completely, and there's just no way to know it because you don't have anything to go on from the NFL perspective, it is a lot to put on that player because that is the most essential part of the equation of do you have a Super Bowl caliber roster, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's very fair to indeed say. If you have questions or observations, I guess I should say, for Ben Goessling, hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line at 64686. I will ask you whether you have a view on one of the debates that seemingly has broken out this week, as odd as it sounds, regarding the zip on the ball, the velocity. Because I don't remember if we talked about this before, how McCarthy was viewed coming out of college. I don't remember him being viewed as a guy who's got a cannon, but I also thought it was not considered like it wasn't going to be necessarily a significant impediment. What do you know about that? What have you heard about that? What have you observed about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think when he was coming out, there was this question, just because he didn't throw the ball that much in college, was this kind of an implicit way of saying we don't trust him to carry the offense. That wasn't really the case. I mean, that was a team that wanted to play a certain way, and I think a lot of Jim Harbaugh's teams have played that way. A lot of what people came out of the combine with, I think, was they watched him throw and said, oh, this guy actually has an arm that can make a lot of the throws that we need to see. And everything we've seen in training camp last year and then practices this year, he certainly has the arm talent, as people like to call it, to play this position in the NFL. Is it the biggest arm you've ever seen? Is it Sam Darnold? Probably not, but certainly you don't get drafted where he got drafted without an arm that can make a lot of the throws that you need to make in the NFL. I don't think that's going to be something that people are terribly concerned about once they see him do more of it. I mean, we've had a chance to see a lot of it in practices, and he throws the ball over the middle with plenty of velocity. He can throw the ball downfield. He can throw on the move, kind of some of the off-platform stuff that a lot of quarterbacks have to make. We've seen a lot of those things. The bigger question for him, and he admitted this yesterday, is those throws that require a little bit more touch because there's a linebacker dropping over the middle and you have to fit it over the top of him in coverage and hit a guy in timing and give him room to run with the ball and all of those kinds of things. And he basically said, my fastball is good. I need to have the off-speed pitches to go with it. And that's where a lot more of the work comes in for him. And he's gotten better, I think, even in that regard as well. But it's more about, I think, for him, the idea that it doesn't all have to be 90 miles an hour. You can put some touch on the ball and put some accuracy on it to go with the arm talent that he's shown. So I think that's more the question, more the coaching point for him than anything regarding how much can he let it fly.
Should we be interested in the services of one Jair Alexander?
I would be surprised if they're interested to a degree that they're going to pay him market value at this point. I think it's something to kick the tires on as far as I understand it. I think it's something they're going to look at, but I think a lot of the questions with him, specifically with the injuries, would be what ultimately would lead them to not do it. I would be surprised if they signed him. I think if he's here it's one of those things where he goes through it, he takes some visits, there's not an offer that he likes, and you get to training camp, and there's a lower price point to bring him in. I think that would probably be the scenario. I can imagine them getting him in here. But short of that, I would have a hard time seeing it. I mean, Jalen Ramsey probably makes a little more sense if they were going to make a trade. But even then, I think the idea that they go out and make a big addition for a corner at this point, I'd be a little surprised if that happens. I think Ramsey's probably a little more likely than Alexander, but I would be surprised if either of those things come to fruition, at least at a point where you have to give up a lot to get one of those guys.
So is it the concern? I mean, obviously he's played half the game, so injury, that's why, the Packers were not very, opaque about it. They said, yeah, we like him when he plays. He just doesn't play that much. Is it more that feeling of there's this other piece to him that makes it, makes him too much of a headache as well, a combination of both, or is it potentially it's going to be too expensive and you're not going to be able to steal him for like a 1-year deal where you maybe are protected and you have a lot of incentives that are built in there based on the number of games he plays?
I think it's all of it to an extent, because some of the injury stuff, I think, has been these questions of, is he going to go out there unless he's 100%? And, how many of those questions are wrapped up in how he feels about the team, his relationship with the head coach? I mean, I think some of those questions came up quite a bit in Green Bay last year of, is he going to say, you know what, I'm not going to risk my body because I don't really believe in where I fit in this team long term? And I think some of those questions become part of what drives the injury conversation with him. But whether it's that or whether it's just inability to stay healthy, inability to stay on the field, I think a lot of those things are part of the equation. And then you factor all that in with the price, and the talent is certainly there. I mean, when he's been good, he's been one of the best corners in the NFL, and there's no really debating that. I mean, we've seen him make a lot of plays over the years and be a very, very good cover corner. He can be physical, he can run. I mean, all of those things are what you want at that position, but you do have to have a guy that you can count on over the course of a season. And I think some of the things that happened in Green Bay, I mean, the coin toss thing where he basically made himself a captain and went out there and almost got the coin toss wrong. I mean, all of that kind of stuff is, you kind of just look at it and say, if we're going to add this guy, all of this is part of the picture with him. And how does he fit in this defense? How does he fit with Brian Flores? I mean, I think all of those things have to be factored in, and you ultimately put a price on that player and say, if this is something we feel is worth it, then we go there, and if not, then you probably don't do it. But that all of those questions may lower the price beyond what he's willing to do.
What's your own view on the significance of Justin Jefferson participating in, obviously, well, this time was mandatory, but up until now, the other stuff that he's been involved in as well? I mean, it certainly looks to me like a good faith move that everybody wins, given the fact that you are asking, you're trying to get this quarterback started really fast, right? And so the idea that you have, you do everything within your power to give him the best chance to hit the ground running, I would think would had to be welcomed within the administration, including the head coach, correct?
Yeah, I think it's a big deal, and I think one of the reasons it's a big deal is how much Kevin O'Connell seemed to view it as a big deal. It was interesting yesterday. So O'Connell finishes his press conference. Jefferson's next up, and Jefferson's kind of lingering in the back. If people haven't watched the clip, you can find it on the Vikings website or on their socials and all that kind of stuff. Jefferson's lingering in the back, kind of joking around, pretending to be a reporter and asking O'Connell a question, and O'Connell kind of hangs around. He says, I actually have a question for you. So he starts the press conference asking Jefferson, what have you learned from from OTAs and minicamp? What's been the thing you've gotten out of this? And Jefferson kind of gives the standard answer, and O'Connell goes, I'm going to take that as a guarantee that you're going to be here next year. And Jefferson laughs and jokes and says, we got to talk about that and we'll see where it goes. But whether it was that or the number of times that he talked about the benefit of that whole receiver room being here, or McCarthy and Jefferson having time on the field, I think he viewed this as a big deal to have Justin Jefferson here, especially because those two didn't have a lot of time on the field together last year. McCarthy was starting to get a few first-team reps right around the time he got hurt, and that was going to continue if he'd stayed healthy, but obviously he wasn't able to do that. So they have not spent a ton of time on the field, or at least hadn't done that before this spring. So you don't really want to go into training camp with all of these things of kind of the get to know you period, so to speak, between a quarterback and a receiver happening 6 weeks before you have to go on Monday Night Football to start the season. I think there has been an element with McCarthy of let's maximize the time we have, knowing the time that we lost. And I think a lot of their thinking on asking Jefferson to be here and imploring him, or impressing upon him, I should say, the value of it was baked into this idea that they want to make up for as much of that lost time as they can and get this thing going, because this relationship between Jefferson and McCarthy is going to have a lot of success and a lot of people's reputations riding on it, and they want to make sure it's up to speed as quickly as they can possibly do it.
What for you is your number one legitimate take that you take out of the 3-day mandatory minicamp?
I think the big thing for me is when you watch them line up on offense, whether it's the heavier personnel, whether it's some of the things that you see them call, this does feel like a team that wants to be more physical and wants to be more able to support its quarterback in ways that I don't think we've seen them do under Kevin O'Connell. I think the way you've watched them go about it, where it is a lot more physical types of runs. I think Jordan Mason's going to play a big role. I think the fact that they signed Josh Oliver to the deal that they did shows you that they want to continue to invest in big people that can help set a tone up front. And I think a lot of the reason for that is it just makes it easier on a quarterback who's coming in. And I think they feel confident about his ability, but they don't want to put him in situations where, okay, it's 3rd and 7, and they're going to be doubling Justin Jefferson, so you may have to look off that quick and hold a safety where you're going to work to the backside of the play, and then there may be pressure, so you have to make a throw on the move. Like, they don't want him to have to do that more often than is necessary. And if you're in situations where you can run the ball and put yourself in 2nd and 4 or in 3rd and 2, I think those things are on their minds. I think a lot of what they talked about last year with play style and being physical, I mean, they said all those things, but they didn't have the people to back that up. And I think now that they do, it does seem like a team that wants to match that talk and that rhetoric with action. And I expect that you're going to see that more often. I think what we saw in minicamp is proof of that, at least from my eyes, and I'm curious to see what it looks like once they put pads on. But I think there is going to be a difference in the identity of this offense.
Is it automatic, by the way, that Sam Howell is the backup quarterback?
No, I don't think it's automatic. I mean, he certainly is. He was working with the twos a lot of this week, and he's going to get the opportunity to do that. But they've been excited enough about Max Brosmer that I think he's going to get some looks. He's looked good, and he's looked like somebody that can run the offense and can command things, or at least pick up on things enough that you expect he's going to continue to develop. So Sam Howell, I think, is going to have every chance to have that job, but I don't think anything is locked in at this point. Now, the question is, do you want a rookie quarterback backing up JJ McCarthy? I think that may be the thing that ultimately leads them to Sam Howell, but no, I don't think it's completely guaranteed. I think there are going to be some things that get decided in competition, and if Max Brosmer is the one that's up to the job, then I think it's possible it's him, or they go do some other things. I mean, there's still a lot of ways they could go. Maybe there's a trade they make for a veteran quarterback that's been here a time or two. I don't know, but I'll throw that in there just to rile things up a little bit. Yeah. But I don't think it's guaranteed at this point that Howell's the backup. Let's put it that way.
Have a wonderful weekend. We appreciate the time as always, sir, and we'll chat next week.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Sam.
Ben Goessling, brought to you by Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. It just occurs to me I do have to do my air conditioning checkup. A little late, although that's worked out okay this year because we've not had the severe heat that we sometimes do in June. We've had nothing but that, of course. Today was mid-50s, just a wonderful day. Even better when there's no sun, a lot of clouds, a little bit of rain, some drizzle, and perhaps even some sleet as well. Top 5 includes what?
With their season on the line, the Oilers didn't fight, Dan. They fought back.